Kurt Johnsson.
That's right.
We are at a conference called SAND, Science and Non-Duality.
Yeah.
And it deals with the sort of complicated meeting between what is scientific and what is sort of spiritual.
Yeah. Or what is scientific in the realm of consciousness.
Okay, yeah. Right.
Yeah.
And you are here to present a book that is soon coming out.
Yeah, next month. Yeah.
That has one of the absolutely longest arrays of endorsement that I ever saw.
Yeah, we've been very, very lucky, both across the consciousness, religious, spiritual, transformational, and scientific community to like a book that's talking about the trends that are happening globally to push the consciousness of our species toward a holistic, oneness, sensitive, sustainable, organismic understanding of who we are as a species, who we are as individuals in that species pool, and how we treat this planet and how we live on this planet in a successful, balanced, ecological way.
So it's totally really about applied knowledge and
it's
wisdom.
about everything that's trending in that direction of a holistic approach to worldwide problem solving and how to live on this planet in a way that is not amping up to a catastrophe. Yeah, absolutely. And these trends that we're talking about are highly demonstrable across all the fields. Everybody is aware, from governance to sociology to science to spirituality to consciousness, that worldwide there has to be the emergence of, call it a cosmology or a gestalt or a zeitgeist, that really understands that everything is profoundly connected. All organisms are not separate. Everything is a part of a whole. It's also a part of a separate self. These are interconnected bubbles, spheres, whatever you want to call them. And we have to start living in a way that this idea that we're separate and that at every level we can just take, that has to pass away, or we'll be heading for gigantic global problems. So, and we also show from tremendous amount of scientific research, particularly on brain, mind, and consciousness, that where the human understanding tends to be going in surveys of younger people, surveys, let's say, from the Occupy movement, the Arab Spring, the Catholic Spring, are these outbreaks of understanding on a global level of how to have this idea of the idea of we and how we are together.
Would you mind saying a few words of your very complex huge background in all these connected areas?
Yeah. Well, here I'm really kind of lucky. My pedigree's odd. I'm retired from the American Museum of Natural History in New York City. My doctorate's in evolution, ecology, comparative biology, and systematics. And in science, I've published about 7 books and 200 peer-reviewed articles on evolution and ecology. So that's one of the fields that I've been a gigantic part of. At the same time, I was also a monk in the English tradition for 14 years, and transitioned, I guess you would say, from religion to spirituality to consciousness, which I think if you look worldwide now, there's 35 to 40% of people say that they're conscious but not religious, or they say they're spiritual but not religious. So obviously I went that track, and I'm very involved now at a worldwide level in all this associations and networks that are talking about the experience of consciousness across all the traditions. So groups like what's called the Interspiritual Dialogue, the Contemplative Alliance, Evolutionary Leaders, all of these, I'm a part of that discussion. And what that's really about, again, is a holistic discussion of how the world of perception, the world of consciousness, meets this real world of actual needs and actual problems and challenges, and begins to problem solve from all of our interior gifts and all of our exterior gifts. So everything that we understand subjectively from the depth of consciousness, and everything that the most high-tech technological or science deals with. So my background's across that entire arena, both professionally. So I also am a humanist. I actually represent the humanists at the United Nations. And that discussion is a very even-handed discussion, again, between the scientific world and the world of consciousness. And another book that I did about 6 years ago that was a bestseller was actually on science and the humanities. So that's also something that I've been very lucky to be a part of, is understanding, again, what is this inner discussion of the arts, this understanding of reality at that depth of level of heart, emotion, being, and then how that relates to this other world of technology and the world that we build in structures and development.
Because it seems to be hard to change very much dramatically out there before something has happened.
Absolutely. In other words, we will tend to see everything niche, divided, separate, and all in boxes until our own experience has driven us in one way or the other to understand that the solutions that work, and also the solutions that the heart seems to be demanding, and that the deepest parts of our emotions are demanding, are in this holistic, call it the big yes, this big realm where everything is treated as one phenomenon. And we didn't need to do that when the world was smaller, when it was resource rich, when we weren't competing for even the basic things. But in the situation now in the world with the population and resources, and what's the future of development? Is it sustainable? What about the challenges of global warming and pollution? And just go through this list. When you confront that level, which has kind of emerged since the 1970s, this realization that we've got to meet these challenges, you're suddenly pushed into saying we need multi-perspectival solutions, multi-perspectives, multi-level problem solving, multi-levels of feedback. And that's luckily, and this is of course why we're here this week, this conversation worldwide now is huge, and it's significant, and it's powerful. So that's really important, So here I am from the USA, East Coast, you're here from Sweden, and people here from all over the world talking about where this conversation meets the road.
The endorsement that you have chosen to put first is by Ken Wilber.
Ken Wilber, yeah.
Which I have gotten so much from as well.
Yeah.
Is he especially important for you?
He is. I have to say that in maybe the last 5 years, when I was looking for a map of what my sense of consciousness and holism was asking of me, and actually asking of where the world needed to go, I was saying, who has mapped out the interconnections of everything, how everything's playing, so that I have a chance of understanding very quickly where everything fits together. Now, it's not a perfect map, but it's one of the best ones we have. We have integral, we have spiral dynamics, there are other ideas out there, but if you're not familiar with integral and spiral dynamics, they're actually, in the sense, maps of the interrelationship of all the sectors of humans and what humans are doing. And they're extremely skillful. So I've been really using that map for at least half a decade, and I know Ken personally, and we've done things together collegially, and what he's offered with that big holistic vision is really, it's huge and it's important. So, and it's amped things up relative to the speed in the conversation.
And we could also say that his theories are based on Plato, so it's nothing sort of really new invented, but he and a lot of people have certainly developed a big cohesive picture.
Yeah, and actually it's interesting you mentioned that, because how he did his work was he actually read everything, and then he would summarize everything on like little sheets of paper or cards, and then try to organize in a huge room, are there common threads to how everything is interrelated? And he originally thought that he would come to like one central thread, like one unifying principle. Actually, what he ended up discovering, and it's the basis of his 4-quadrant model, which of course can be looked at spherically, 3-dimensionally, then it wouldn't be quadrants, it'd be concentric spheres. But that actually the way that we view reality is the way that all languages are structured. The world of I, the world of you, and the world of the wider collective it. And that everything that's going on the planet, every discussion, every problem, every challenge, is emerging either from this type of a personal space, from a we collective space, or from an institutional world of creed, world of dogma, world of political parties, that whole world. And so what integral theory does, it shows you very clearly how these worlds are playing. And it also points out that this interesting statistic, since human beings came on the planet, there's been 106.5 billion of us that have come and gone on the planet. And every one of those individual people living their 30 years or their 50 years or 60 years has simply been navigating their individual space to their collective space and to their institutional space. And it's even amazing, it's amazing to me, that we have evolved as successfully as we have when these spaces by their nature don't easily relate. And particularly when you get to the institutional space, governments and dogmas, political parties, worldviews, they become oppressive. And I think one of Ken Wilber's central insights is that what he calls the disconnect between the intimacy of I and we, that everybody, like for instance, everybody that's listening to this right now, we could all agree on the common needs of the heart. Love, care, kindness, family, community, balance. And yet when we get to institutions on a worldwide basis, there's a massive disconnect of how those institutions relate to those fundamental values. And so the integral community, consciousness community, transformational community is saying, look, this is the thing we've got to remedy. We've got to bring into alignment the structures that we've built and the actual needs and who we really are. And that would actually predict a different kind of world.
And those two sides need to meet simultaneously, sort of.
Yeah.
Otherwise we won't get there.
Yeah, not only do they need to meet, but, and we were just in a session where this was being talked about, we've got to allow things that no longer work and that are no longer valid and represent an old worldview that's no longer serving us to fall away. Those structures have to fall away and be replaced by structures that are more people-friendly, that are holistic, that are comprehensive, and so on.
And the name of the book that you are now releasing?
The name of the book is The Coming Interspiritual Age. The Coming Interspiritual Age. And what that means... Do we really have to bring in religion into this? No,
Isn't it
no. Because the word spirituality doesn't really point to religion, and I want to really point this out. Religion at the level of dogma and creed is a world of creed over deed, that what's important is what you believe. Spirituality is actually what consciousness is. And in spirituality, which equals consciousness, that's a world of different values. That's a world of right being, right action. Deed is more important than creed. It's the world of the heart. So anybody who's listening to this in secular Sweden, where the word spirituality has gotten equated with religion and they are not the same, please differentiate. Religion, yes. Creed and dogma and hierarchy and rules, right? Arbitrary. Spirituality is this world of the heart, which is what's really important to you and how do I serve that? What is meaningful to all of us and how do I serve that? That's spirituality. Actually, there's a joke in English I have to share with you in Sweden. It may have gotten there, maybe not, but religion is for people who are afraid of going to hell. And spirituality is for people who've been there.
Okay.
So keep that in mind.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
So how could we possibly sort of unite the different belief systems? How could we go about
It's
that?
never going to happen in the mind. So the answer is uniting them as belief systems could never happen. Because the mind is a creature of separation to begin with. Its job is to separate one thing from another, right? So what has to happen, and this is actually what that word interspiritual means, it says we have to go to the common experience of the heart that is underneath all of those cultural structures that have developed through time and recognize that the only thing there that's real, the only thing there that actually serves us is that deeper message about the love, the kindness, the mutual caretaking, the building a world together that's user-friendly for all people. That's actually what inner spirituality means. It means the lens of the heart. And actually, even the reason that we're doing inner spirituality as a dialogue within all the world's religions is that we're trying to call the religious systems back to the roots of what they were about. And let me just mention just one caveat there. If you go back to the beginning of every religion, it was something happening in a very intimate I and we space. And it was a message about love and kindness and how people are treated that then got hijacked and changed when it went to the institutional or it level and then started being about rules and conforming to social norms. And this hijacking, this is actually, there's a part of the science of religion that's called the cognitive science of religion, basically says that what religion does is hijack consciousness, hijacks spirituality, the world of the heart, changes it into something else culturally, which then does not serve us. So actually, let's say in Sweden, where your cultural evolution has been toward secularism, has been because of the realization that that hijacking by religion is a pathology. It's a pathology. And so what happens then in spirituality, true spirituality or the world of the heart, is to say no to that hijacking and let's go back to the original values that the great historical figures like Buddha or Jesus were actually talking about. And the religions have hijacked their original message.
Jesus was not Christian. He was a spiritual Jew.
He was, absolutely.
And for the person that wants to be more rational than emotional, maybe we could say that if you don't accept something like a spirit inside, you won't have any free will. You won't have any meaning making if you're only rational. Yeah,
well, one of the great, I think everybody probably in Sweden knows the Western humanist movement and the ethical philosophers Felix Adler, A.C. Grayling, who were the founders of humanism. And their insight was, to be honest, very much what Jackie's just saying, is that there is no difference between the driving urgency toward justice, toward peace, toward unanimity, toward love, in the name of a religious or spiritual story, to that urgency coming straight from the heart, just out of a desire for an ethical community and a world of fairness and justice. Those are the same energies. So if you call it spiritual or you call it rational or you call it even pragmatic, and some of the new cosmologies are actually pragmatic. They're actually saying that if we don't address the world that our mythological systems have created and make the necessary adjustments in those worldviews for a pragmatic reason only. Sustainability, better living, world happiness, that's going to be a part of the problem. But even if there's a great guy in the United States who's saying this now, he's at Harvard, David Korten, economist, that even if for pragmatic reasons we decided to make these changes, if there was a God, he'd be happy with that. God, they finally did something right? If there's no God, doesn't matter anyway. You just made the most practical decision. And so he's right in a way. If we do that even for pragmatic reasons alone, that from the point of view of the heart, it's simply the right thing to do. What you would do for your own family, for your own people that are among your loved ones, we end up with the same result. So it's really, in a sense, irrelevant what's true about these religious stories. It's really in that sense irrelevant. And that's another thing that interspirituality is saying, is that if you enter the world of the heart, the world of ideas that wants to separate falls very secondary. Just like when you love people. When you love people, it's about who they are. It's not about what color they are. It's not about what they believe. It's not whether they're gay, they're straight, whatever they be. None of those boxes. It's about who they are as an undeniably vessel of just inherent value, as we hopefully would see in everything, every animal, every part of the ecosphere, every part of being here on the planet. So
you have several different points in the book that you cover, or principles or trends.
Right.
Is there any one that you would care to bring forth?
Yeah, I'll actually wrap several together because they summarize this discussion. And the first two are that this process of a globalization and this process of a growing multiculturalism are completely inevitable. There is no way that the world is not going toward a global homogeny. But the question is, what is that going to look like and what is going to inform that? Is it going to be politicians, power brokers, banks, financial institutions, exploitative modalities that are not people-friendly? Or is there going to be a wider movement, call it the consciousness movement or the humanist movement or the transformational movement, that's going to say if this trend toward a global oneness is inevitable, it has to be informed by these deep, deep values, right? And what we point out is that all of these outbreaks around the world, the Arab Spring, the Occupy movement, now what's called the Catholic Spring, are all this deeper upwelling of these deeper values saying this is what has to inform the coming globalization. So that's really the question that we're arriving at. And the other one would be, and it's very important.
Excuse me, but
yeah,
what do you
ahead.
think about globalization as compared to local solutions?
Well, what I'm talking about in globalization actually is the amalgam of all those local solutions. In other words, the only way that a successful globalization will work, it'll be set up like an ecosystem, that if every local and regional problem is dealt with according to the parameters of that situation, totally. So we're not talking about some grand plan.
No.
That's not even the way an ecosystem works. It's a lot of things doing different things, but they're in a wonderful homogeny. They're in a wonderful balance and co-working. Yeah. So the other thing I wanted to say at the end, because I think especially for a more secular society, it's important, is the tremendous amount of brain-mind study now that shows, and I think of most of you that are listening to this, think about just among your friends and people you know, especially over the last few years, that there's an undeniable trend that our cognitive skills are moving toward this sense of connectedness, toward the falling away of the old boundaries that used to divide, whether those were religious boundaries, sexual preference boundaries, ethnic color. When you look at, for instance, statistics in younger people, these boundaries are falling away. And they're not falling away so much because of how people have been taught. They're falling away because the mind, in its cognitive skills, is starting to see the world in this profoundly interconnected, one interrelated gestalt. So what we basically say in the book is that this understanding of unity or oneness is arising as a new self-evident truth. And we all remember, and in fact all the societies in the European Union, the United States, are a result of what happened in the Renaissance, and then what tipped the models of governance in Europe in the 17th and 18th centuries was the arising of the self-evident truth of the value of the individual. And then a 300-year transition away from monarchy and toward participatory forms of government. So what's arising now, because of the way brain-mind seeing profound interconnectedness, is a new demand, this is where Wilber comes in, on how a collective has to look. And that a collective has to be built on mutual responsibility within the collective. Not all the wealth going to just a few, not only just the resources being available to only a few, but where there's a sense at the deepest level of the responsibility within a collective and the stepping up within the collective to see that all of that's provided for. And you see, I think everybody knows, listening to this, that that could not be possible without a shift in, call it cosmology or call it zeitgeist or call it whatever you would call it. Absolutely.
We're taking higher and higher perspectives, including more and more minorities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just automatically.
Automatically, yeah. And see, that's the point. In other words, if I would say a lot of times, if I was a betting man, I would not lay my money on whether education could solve this. Just word of mouth. Me speaking to you, or me speaking to you, or Jackie speaking to you. But what I could lay my money on, I think, from what I see historically and from spiral dynamics, integral, and other developmental history, it's called, is that brain-mind, just like in the Renaissance, made this incredible shift to the value of the individual, which washed away 70 centuries of monarchy. Incredible to think that 70 centuries of monarchy could be washed away. Now we're moving toward seeing unity, seeing oneness, seeing a collective organism, and what'll happen then is decades of experiment with how that's manifested in world structures. So a lot of you, if you start to follow on the internet, let's say the global economic discussion with books like Sacred Economics or Agenda for a New Economy or The Great Turning, books like this, Conversations with Wall Street, are all new conversations of what do new structures look like that serve everybody.
And at the same time, these new structures are picking up the old ideas from the old traditions, but in a new way.
In a new way.
So I mean, all these ideas about the even the quantum physics connecting with the old wisdom.
Absolutely, and this is such an important point, is that what's residing in this collective reservoir of human experience is a deep, deep wisdom at the level of just even at common sense. And as has been really pervading this whole conference, that deeper understanding, which is almost the kind of wisdom that a parent has toward a family, is what has to inform then this newer conversation. It's like the new wine and new wineskins that Jesus talked about. Religious figure, but great metaphor. That we have to take these worlds and build them together. All of evolution is a process of transform and include. It's never separate and discard.
No.
So we can't build a new world without the reservoir of wisdom that we've collected. But we have to distill it in a way that it's actually wisdom and not, in the American word, bullshit. You know, and so much of, to be honest, so much of old religious stories has been bullshit. But in that is wisdom, and that's what we have to distill out, and that's about love, about kindness, about unanimity, you know, all of these things. Yeah.
Thank you so much for your work.
You are welcome.
I'm curious
Thanks,
about seeing the book as it comes.
Yeah, me as well, after a lot of work.
Yeah, congratulations.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jackie. Yeah, thanks so much.